So to be honest, I've had this video planned for several weeks now, and you can go and check out the proof of that in the chat room or on Patreon, but I've been thinking about doing a video on the death of Bitcoin. And yes, just hear me out. I know there's going to be a lot of people already foaming at the mouth with someone who disagrees that Bitcoin may in fact not go to the moon. But I feel with the weekend dip that happened on Bitcoin, now might be a good time to sort of voice my slight concern with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general, because I think there's a lot of concerns there that are not really being addressed and that other YouTubers, people on Reddit and people on Twitter aren't really voicing when it comes to a Bitcoin argument. And if you do disagree with me, drop your reasons why down in the comments. I'm more than happy to have some dialogue with some alternative opinions, because to be clear, I am a big fan of cryptocurrency and what it represents, and I do think it is the future. I just think that future may be further off than we think, and I'll tell you why after this. So I'm sure this video is going to reach a different kind of audience. We don't normally talk about cryptocurrency too much here on LWT. We're more stocks and generic finance related. So if that is something that floats your boat, do consider subscribing and turning on the bell. If you haven't done so already, please do like this video. It will massively help me out with the ranking. Even if you disagree with the points in this video, it may actually help somebody who is less knowledgeable than you make a firm decision when it comes to making an investment decision. So do help me out, make sure that like button is turned blue. And to be clear right off the bat, this is not financial advice. I'm just a guy giving my personal opinions and worries with Bitcoin on YouTube. If you do like the shape of my beard and want to support LWT, you can go and check out these exclusive perks on Patreon. I share my weekly portfolio there every single week, along with my buys and sells. And if you haven't signed up with eTORO, you can do so on the pinned comment and buy some Bitcoin. If you do it via that link, deposit and make one trade, you get free lifetime access to the LWT investing chat room. Now back to Bitcoin, and in full transparency, this video is recorded on Sunday. The Bitcoin price is currently around about 56,000 US dollars, and I'm fully expecting it to either be back at all-time highs or even maybe below 40,000 on Wednesday when this video is intended to come out. So please bear in mind the date is currently Sunday, the 18th of April. Now if Bitcoin does fall from here, there's going to be some conspiracy theory down in the comments that I traveled back through time or I just reset my iPhone, but please take my word for it, it was recorded on April the 18th. Now on YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, and all of these things, I see numerous cases on why you should hold Bitcoin and continue buying. And to be honest, I did recently just buy this dip today at 56,000. Not a big position, about 5,000 US dollars worth, which in my total sort of investment portfolio is a very small amount. But please bear in mind for the rest of this video, I did buy Bitcoin and I do have a plan with it, which I will discuss later in this video. But I do have some concerns with the previous mentioned social media. And this really does concern me because over the last 10 years, anyone really could have invested pretty much anywhere in equities or cryptocurrency and they'd be sitting very, very rich now. So there's a lot of experts currently on social media that are not qualified and have not sat through a big recession. Now to be clear, if you don't know my background, I was a wealth manager of 12 years and I worked for one of the largest independent wealth management companies on the planet. So I do actually hold some financial qualifications, but again, this video is not intended as financial advice. But with everybody else winning in the market for the last 10 years and the markets reaching all-time highs and Bitcoin being as volatile as it is near all-time highs, it does leave me with some real concerns. But then again, everybody is bullish and I fully get that. I do think there is a need long-term, way in the future, when we're all one planet colonizing other planets, a need for a decentralized one world currency. But I don't think Bitcoin is that currency. Well, at least not yet, which leads me to my concerns. Firstly is I don't think the world is ready yet. I mean, if you think about it, we've got tensions again flaring up with Russia and US and China. You've also got countries in the Gulf area and countries in Africa that I just don't think are ready to give up their state currency and all get behind one decentralized currency that would be good to work with as a nation. A good example of this is Russia and China. For years now, even decades, they've been trying to get oil and gold out of the US dollar valuation. and quite unsuccessfully. There's been speculation for years now that Russia are going to value their oil in Russian rubles, and China, well, who knows what they are up to anyway. But I think the point really there is that the US is not willing to give up control of having most of the world's assets valued in US dollars. I mean, if you think about it, it gives the US the ability to print a lot more money than its competitors. If gold is bought in dollars, oil is bought in dollars, and pretty much every metal and commodity is bought in dollars, countries trading with other countries outside the US still need a dollar reserve, which means they will need to buy dollars, and it gives the US the opportunity to print even more, meaning that they have a little bit of an edge on the other economies around the world. Now, for Bitcoin to be recognized by the US as a stable currency, that would mean that the US is willing to give up a little bit of its rights and accept that Bitcoin is a good system. And I just don't see the US willing to do that. I really don't. They love the fact that everything's valued in dollars, and of course they want the ability to send out as many stimulus checks as possible when needed. Now, I know that institutions and banks are sort of getting more used to the idea of Bitcoin, but really it all comes down to the US government, and I'll come on to that in just a second. But I don't think the US government is going to give up the power of the US dollar at any time in the future. And we've even seen countries like Turkey completely banning cryptocurrency transactions, and India looks like it may follow suit. Now, that might sound like some small nation to people watching from the US, but India is a huge population with a huge up-and-coming economy. And Turkey's definitely not the size of Belgium either. Now, there's been many calls for regulations rather than complete banning on cryptocurrency, and I do think that is probably a more likely outcome, especially when it comes to the US. I mean, think about it long term. We hit a big recession right now. We are overdue one, it's a fact. We've got low unemployment, the US is printing money like there's no tomorrow. We are due a decent crash in equities and in currencies. If the US does crash, everyone's going to flock to what they know is a safe haven. We've seen that with gold, it hasn't really rallied as much as it should have, especially during the last year or so, but Bitcoin has, and that's proof that people are flocking to Bitcoin because it has no allegiance to a government, and it's sort of a good hedge against everything else out there on the market. And with this demand, that's clearly sent Bitcoin's price near to the moon, because I heard that it's not at the moon yet. And I think the US will be looking at this in a recession scenario, that majority of US dollars are being sold and Bitcoin is being bought, especially if the inhabitants of the US themselves are not spending money on the economy helping it grow, and they're out buying a decentralized currency outside the US like Bitcoin. That could cause them to put a regulation on Bitcoin. It could mean hypertaxing. It could mean complete banning. It is speculation, but after all, this is a speculation play anyway. But I think a hypertax or something on them lines is probably the most likely outcome in the US alone. And if you don't believe that's possible, well, look up FATCA, the Foreign Compliance Tax Act. Because Bitcoin is decentralized, it is outside the US and comes under the FATCA guidelines, and it wouldn't take much of a nudge to the people in the right places to set a hypertax on all assets that are coming back via Bitcoin. If this does happen, of course, that could crash the stock price in itself, and I do think it's a strong card the US could play in a recession. And actually, I think it's a no-brainer for the US to do that as a whole, and if they do that, then it could lead to other nations doing a similar route. We already know the UK is lining up a similar scheme to FATCA. Being a foreigner living in Europe, I'm fully aware of that situation, and there's many other countries, including the EU, looking at foreign compliance tax acts. Now, if that sounds too far-fetched, look at what Ray Dalio said, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, investor of all time. Now, of course, he is a skeptic when it comes to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general, but he thinks an all-out ban in the US is very, very possible. And when asked about this, he talked about the gold ban in 1933. So if you don't think it's possible to ban cryptocurrency and you live in the US, well, you're very, very wrong. In 1933, the US was obviously in a very bad way. FDR had just been elected and he was trying his hardest to get the US economy out of a recession. He realized that people were flocking to things like gold, people with money were moving to gold, and the US dollar was basically not even worth wiping your ass with. So what did he do? Well, he put a ban on holding gold. Yeah, I mean, if you had gold in 1933 after this was acted, and you didn't sell it to the government at a very discounted rate, well, you could go to jail for 10 years. There was even a ban on how much gold a dentist could hold, which was, I think, if I remember correctly, 100 grams. Not a lot at all. So if you held gold after this act passed, you could go to jail for 10 years, and it's very possible that something similar could happen with cryptocurrencies, especially given the fact that it is decentralized and the US has no power over it. Now, to back these points even further, the stimulus king money printing machine that is Jerome Powell came out and said that cryptocurrency is a speculation play and it actually holds no real value, which you have to agree at the end of the day because it's not backed by anything, whereas the US dollar, as an example, is backed by the US economy, government, etc. Now, I'm not saying that's a con for Bitcoin because I actually think that's why people like it, because it holds no affiliation to any nation, therefore you don't really hold the risk of a recession in said nation. But Jerome Powell did say one thing in this article that really did shock me, and I didn't believe it when I said it, and I thought it was a, aha, JP, I've got you moment, but it turns out he was right. Cryptocurrencies are not actually being used that much as a method of payment. So I went ahead and I checked this, and I found out that at the beginning of 2017, the amount of Bitcoin transactions are actually roughly the same as they are now. Now that's 4 years ago, and we know what Bitcoin has done in the last 4 years, so surely there should be more transactions of people using Bitcoin to trade as a currency. For example, you can go and buy a Tesla now with Bitcoin, but why aren't people doing it? This really shook me, to be honest, because if Bitcoin is up as much as it was, I was fully expecting at least these figures to be 5, maybe even 10x in terms of transactions. But simply put, people aren't really using Bitcoin that much to buy and sell things. They tend to be using Bitcoin to buy products that are slightly less ethical. Things like streaming services, are very popular. I'm from the UK, so if I want to go and watch UK TV, and I'm not saying I do this by the way, but if I want to stream UK TV to Hungary and Budapest, then most people now want Bitcoin or something similar as a method of payment, as a yearly subscription, so then they basically take money from my Bitcoin wallet. And I know this because I've got friends like Gary from down the pub who has a nightmare because he has to then open a crypto wallet and he has to put money in. Then he's got the risk of the Bitcoin price going up, down, left to right. And yeah, it's just a bit of a nightmare. But I was actually shocked with this chart, to be honest. I was expecting these Bitcoin transactions in terms of e-commerce to be a way higher figure than what they currently are, especially given that 5-year period. And finally, one of the biggest things that concerns me with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general again comes from JP and the Fed. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, one of the biggest appealing things to them as a consumer was the fact that it was very fast transfers. Now the US and the Fed are working on a system that should be out in the next 2 years to make their money transfers also as close to instantaneous as possible. That said, I don't know if they're going to be able to do this, and I don't think it will be as fast as cryptocurrency, but they are working on it. And the Fed said also the central bank is looking into whether it's worth having their own cryptocurrency, would it be beneficial or indeed needed in the future. Now, if that does happen, imagine having a cryptocurrency that is backed by the US dollar or the US government, or indeed both. Well, that itself, I think, is a strong card for the Fed and the US to hold. And if that does happen, well, it could be quite worrisome for Bitcoin. And that necessarily doesn't mean the fact that there's a new cryptocurrency out there, because we've seen pretty much a new cryptocurrency every couple of days now. But it does mean that they could heavily regulate all the other cryptocurrencies, meaning less competition for their own asset. And all in all, they would probably spin it in a way that they are looking after the amateur investors who are buying unregulated assets. They would say that they are looking after us amateurs who don't have a clue what we're doing, and that we should all go and buy the US crypto. And if you don't believe me, again, go and look at that 1933 gold example, because I think it is a very similar situation. And if a recession does come, it could very well happen again. Now, my thought on cryptocurrency is as follows. Today, I actually just bought $5,000 worth at around about 56,500, I think it was, or something around then. And my plan is to hold it for the relative short term. But I think if news anything of the sort of the points I've mentioned here, I'm going to be cashing out. I do think Bitcoin's got a bright future, but the fact that it is deregulated and uncentralized, I think it's very concerning from a long-term approach, because it could be a very bumpy ride. You throw in the fact that we're also overdue a big crash on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, I think it's just something to be worth note of. But short term, I am quite bullish, hence the reason I bought this little dip. And if we get another decent dip, I may average down, unless there is a relative reason why that dip happened. Now, if you've made it this far in the video, usually on LWT we have a code word somewhere hidden in, and this week's code word is not really a code word. So instead of a code word, what I would like to know is, where will Bitcoin be on Christmas Eve at noon Eastern Time US? I want to know exactly to the dollar, and if anybody gets it exactly right, I have got a hell of a prize for you. I'm going to be giving away 1 free year at Dividend Watch. If you don't know what that is, well, there's a video coming on it very, very soon. And I'll also give you, at the goodness of my heart, 50 Ripple, whatever the price is, if someone gets it exactly right. If you want to discuss and you disagree, let me know down in the comments. We can have some civilized dialogue. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Peace.